We heard Jesus tell us in the gospel tonight, I am the good shepherd. A good shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. I am the good shepherd, and I know mine, and mine know me. I'm going to speak just a little bit about sheep and the importance of sheep and the culture in which Jesus lived. That does not imply in any way that I know anything about sheep. All right, I'm a city kid. It's outside of Grand Rapids, but I did a little reading, but I hope it will lead us to a deeper reason why I'm doing that. As I said, sheep were extremely important to the people at the time of Jesus. Raising sheep was a big business compared to, say, to several years ago when the auto industry was so big and so many relied economically on that industry. In the Middle East at that time, sheep was that kind of business, essential part of the economic life in the Middle East. People used sheep for food, for clothing, and even for religious sacrifices. The number of sheep that someone had, he or she had, easily measured a person's wealth. A good shepherd was highly valued because the shepherd could make or break the owner of the flock. So it's critically important to have a shepherd that was invested in the owner, invested in the sheep. Truly good shepherds were called upon to carry out many important functions. For example, they had to be providers to provide pasture and water to keep the flock healthy and alive. In other words, they had to know their turf. They had to be leaders and guides. Sheep are utterly incapable, maybe kind of brain dead, huh? They're not able really to forage on their own. To appease their insatiable appetite, they had to know when and where to move them and plan their moves to keep the flock from the blazing sun. The shepherd had to kind of move them along so that they would be safe. They had to be a healer and a soother. They had to check the sheep, bathing eyes irritated from sun and dirt, removing brambles from their fleece and taking pebbles from their hoofs. They had to be defenders and protectors. In ancient Palestine, there were bears and wolves and leopards roaming the countryside. The shepherds had to be ready to stand up against those wild beasts and even potentially face injury or even death. The shepherd had to become a sort of buffer, if you wish, and a shield for the sheep. When they were forced to spend the night out in the open country, they had to find a spot where the shepherd could lead them to a cave, to a gulch or a gully to enclose the sheep. They often lied down across the entrance to act as a buffer or a gate to protect the sheep. The shepherds also had to have knowledge about the individual sheep. They called them by name. They needed to know which ones were not the brightest bulbs in the group, which ones were probably a little more crazy, what other ones. And so they had to have a knowledge of the individual sheep in order to keep them together. They had to know their idiosyncrasies and personalities of the sheep. Having said that, hopefully what enters your mind and your thoughts are, gosh, that sounds a lot like a parent. A parent who has to have so much of those leadership qualities in the vocation that they're called to. I think reminds us that parents and grandparents, caregivers, teachers, and role models have to have many of these characteristics in their life. They're called upon to be nurturers and providers, leaders and guides, healers and soothers, defenders and protectors, ones who know us well, even despite our idiosyncrasies. Those are some of the challenges that anyone in leadership positions must have. And so today, in the day that we call Good Shepherd Sunday, I want to thank all of you who are good shepherds. You are true leaders who seek not your own well-being, but the well-being of those entrusted to your care. Like shepherds in the scriptures, you are a wonderful example of laying down your lives for others, because in many, many ways you do that. Any parent who has walked the floor in the middle of the night with a sick or fussy baby knows what it means to lay down one's life for another. So too, any son or daughter who cares for an aging parent with patience and forbearance knows what it means to lay down one's life for another. Any parent who has a rebellious or ungrateful teen or child and still loves them despite their actions knows what it means to lay down one's life for another. Any man or woman who works a long day, returns home to prepare a meal, take their children to sporting events, recitals, and other activities, they know what it means to lay down their lives for another. Any religious education teacher or school teacher knows the challenges of education and persevere in spite of the many obstacles that they face. They know what it means to lay down their lives for another. In this season of Easter, we celebrate the power of Jesus to raise to new life all those who, out of love for God and neighbor, die to themselves so that others might have life. Easter is so much about you and your ability to give your life so that new life can be brought about. We recall the living example of Jesus as the Good Shepherd, and we commit ourselves to try to follow that Good Shepherd. Our church today also asks us to pray for more vocations to the priesthood, diaconate, religious life, and consecrated life. Look at me, an old fart, huh? 74, almost 74 years, and yet, there's not a lot of other younger priests behind us. And so we really need to not only pray, but I think even more important in praying for vocations is actually encouraging young people to answer that call. And so vocations, I believe, just don't happen. They have to be encouraged and supported. And so today, on this Sunday of the Good Shepherd, the church and myself and all who know your sacrifices and see it daily, today we honor you on Good Shepherd. We ask you that we know the burden is hard, that all those roles that you're asked upon to do with no professional training, no skill books to follow, but out of the instinct of your love, you give your life so others can also have life.